The first time H.A. Rolled Finch noticed the crack in the dining room wall, he had been 42 years old, and Helen had been alive. It was a hairline fracture, thin as a spider's leg, running from the crown molding down Tower RD, the window frame. He had made a mental note to fix it that weekend. But the weekend came and went, and the crack remained, and over the years it spread like a quiet disease, branching out into the plaster until it became part of the room's permanent landscape. He stopped seeing it after a while. It was just there, like the creak in the third stair and the way the kitchen faucet dripped if you didn't twist the handle just right. Now, at 72, H.A. Rolled saw it again that he was sitting at the head of the table, his hands folded in front of him, waiting. The room was too warm. The radiators clicked and groaned, pushing out dry heat that made his skin feel tight. Outside, the October wind rattled the branches of the oak tree in the front yard inside. The table was set for 4. Even though only 3 people would be eating, he had made pot roast. Helen's recipe. The meat had been simmering in the Dutch oven since 9 that morning, filling the house with the smell of onions and thyme and something that used to feel like home. He had peeled the potatoes himself, his arthritic fingers struggling with the paring knife, but he had done it. He had done it because this was what fathers did. They cooked. They cleaned. They made sure the table was set and the wine was breathing and the house was warm when their children came home. He had done it for 38 years. He would keep doing it until he couldn't anymore. At the front door opened he heard the voices before he saw the faces. Mayor Cuss, loud and confident, the way he always was. Pamela, higher and sharper, her words tumbling out in a rush of complaints about the traffic and the parking and the cold. H.A. Rolled stood up as they entered the dining room. "Smells good, Dad," Mayor Cuss said. But he didn't look at the pot roast. He was already on his phone, thumb scrolling through something that required his full attention. Pamela swept past him and sat down at the table without a word of greeting. She was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than the entire dining set. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her lips were painted a shade of red that Helen would have called aggressive. "You remembered the Bordeaux?" Pamela asked, glancing at the wine bottle on the Sediboe Road. "Of course," H.A. Rolled said. "I know you prefer it." She didn't thank him. She didn't even nod. She just picked up the bottle and examined the label, her lips pursed as if she were appraising a forgery. Mayor Cuss finally pocketed his phone and sat down. "You're spoiling us, Dad. You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "It's no trouble," H.A. Rolled said. He meant it. The CO King had been the only thing that made him feel useful all week. He served the pot roast. The meat fell apart under the carving knife, tender and rich. He gave Mayor Cuss the largest portion, the way he always did. He gave Pamela the extra potatoes, because she had complained about the portion sizes last time. He took the smallest portion for himself, the piece closest to the bone, the one with less meat and more gristle. The conversation was a thin veneer stretched over something hollow. Mayor Cuss talked about the new job, about the promotion he was angling for, about the bonuses and the stock options and the company CAR. Pamela interrupted him to talk about her father, who had just sold his 3rd business and was considering a 4th. "He's a visionary," Pamela said, stabbing a piece of beef with her fork. "He doesn't just see things as they are. He sees things as they could be. That's why he's successful." "That's great," H.A. Rolled said. "I'm happy for him. He's been a huge help to Mayor Cuss," Pamela continued. "He's been mentoring him, showing him how to network, how to close deals. You know what he told Mayor Cuss last week? He said, success is about who you know. If you're not constantly expanding your circle, you're falling behind." H.A. Rolled nodded. He took a sip of his water. He didn't mention that he had spent 40 years building a circle of his own, clients who trusted him, colleagues who respected him, friends who had stood by him through illness and loss. He didn't mention that he had introduced Mayor Cuss to half the contacts in his address book. He didn't mention the quiet favors he had called in over the years, the strings he had pulled to get Mayor Cuss into the right schools, the right internships, the right jobs. He didn't mention any of it, because he had Leah reneged that mentioning it only made him sound bitter, Dad. And he was not bitter. He was tired, Dad, Mayor Cuss said, and there was something in his voice that made H.A. Rolled look up. "We need to talk about the house." H.A. Rolled's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "The house. We've been thinking," Mayor Cuss said. He glanced at Pamela, who gave him an encouraging nod. With the new job and everything, we've been looking at our long-term plans. And we've realized that this house is, well, it's more than you need, isn't it? It's just you here now. It's a lot of space for one person. Rold set his fork down. The pot roast sat on his plate, untouched. I like the space. Of course you do, Pamela said, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. But you have to think about practicality. This place is a money pit. The heating bills alone must be astronomical. And the maintenance. When's the last time someone looked at the roof? The roof is fine. Rold said. The roof is not fine, Americus said. I was up there last month, remember? I told you there were shingles missing. And the gutters are full of leaves. You can't climb a ladder at your age, Dad. It's not safe. Rold felt the words land like small stones. At your age. He had heard them before, in different contexts. At your age, you should be slowing down. At your age, you should be thinking about the future. At your age, you should be grateful for what you have. He had always smiled and nodded and let the words pass. But this time, something shifted. What are you proposing? Rold asked. He kept his voice level. He had Leah reneged to keep his voice level a long time ago. Americus leaned forward, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. We were thinking that you could sign the deed over to us, Pamela and me. That way, we could take of the upkeep. We could handle the taxes, the insurance, the repairs. You wouldn't have to worry about any of it. Rold looked at his son. Americus was smiling. It was the same smile he had worn when he was a boy, asking for a new bicycle. The same smile he had worn when he was a teenager, asking for a car. The same smile he had worn when he was a young man, asking for a down payment on his first APA. Meant the smile that had always worked. You want me to give you my house, Rold said. We want you to let us take of you, Americus corrected. It's not about ownership, Dad. It's about responsibility. We want to make sure you're taken of. We want to make sure you don't have to worry about anything. Rold looked at Pamela. She was studying her nails, as if the conversation was beneath her attention. I appreciate the offer, Rold said. But I'm not ready to give up the house yet. Your mother and I bought this place together. It's where we raised you. It's where he stopped. He didn't want to say it. He didn't want to remind them that Helen had died in this house. In the bed they had read for 40 years, Americus's smile faltered. I understand, Dad. I really do. But you have to think about what's best for everyone. We're not trying to take anything from you. We're trying to help. You're not helping, Rold said quietly. You're asking me to give away the only thing I have left. The room went still. Pamela looked up from her nails. Her eyes were calculating. We're not asking you to give it away, she said. We're asking you to let us help. There's a difference. Is there? Rold asked. He didn't raise his voice. He never raised his voice. But something in his tone made Americus shift in his chair. Dad, you're not being reasonable, Americus said. You're 72 years old. You're not going to live forever. Eventually, this house is going to belong to us anyway. Why not make it easier for everyone? The words hung in the air like smoke. Eventually, this house is going to belong to us anyway. Rold felt something cold settle in his chest. It wasn't anger. He had felt anger before, and this was different. This was a deep, aching emptiness that spread through him like frost. I need to think about it, Rold said. Americus smiled again, relieved. Take all the time you need, Dad. We're not rushing you. We just want what's best for you. The rest of the meal passed in a blur. Rold tasted the pot roast. He pushed the food around his plate and nodded at appropriate intervals, but his mind was elsewhere. After dinner, Americus and Pamela left. They didn't offer to help with the dishes. They never did. Rold stood at the kitchen sink and washed the plates. The water was hot against his hands, soothing the ache in his knuckles. He scrubbed each plate fully, methodically, the way Helen had taught him. He thought about the crack in the dining room wall. It was still there. It would always be there, no matter how many times he patched it. He thought about the house. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even particularly large, but it was his. It was the only thing he had built that couldn't be taken away. Or so he had thought. He dried the plates and put them away. He wiped down the counters. He swept the floor. When he was finished, he walked to the study and sat down in the old leather chair. It was worn and sagging, and the springs poked through in places, but he refused to replace it. Helen had bought it for him for their 25th anniversary. He looked around the room. The bookshelves were filled with his old insurance manuals and Helen's romance novels. The desk was covered in papers he hadn't touched in years. The filing cabinet was stuffed with tax returns and receipts and documents he had never bothered to organize. He thought about Americus's words. Eventually, this house is going to belong to us anyway. That he thought about all the money he had given his son over the years. The tuition, the car, the down payment, the repairs on Americus's own house, the ones he had called his father for, time after time, because he couldn't afford them himself. He thought about the way Americus had looked at him tonight, like he was an inconvenience. A problem to be managed. Ha rolled open the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a folder he hadn't looked at in years. It was thick, stuffed with documents. He pulled it out and opened it. The papers inside were legal agreements, trust documents, investment portfolios, real estate holdings. He had never told Americus about any of it. He had never told anyone. He had built a life in quiet. He had worked for 40 years, saved for 40 years, invested for 40 years. He had never bought a new car. He had never taken a vacation. He had never spent money on anything that wasn't essential. And now he had more money than he knew what to do with. He had always planned to leave it to Americus. He had always planned to give his son everything. But tonight, sitting in the RK study with the weight of his son's words pressing down on him, he wasn't sure he wanted to anymore. That he took out his phone. The screen glowed in the darkness. He scrolled through his contacts until he found a name he hadn't used in years. Daniel Reeves. His lawyer. Ha rolled typed a message. He didn't think about it. He just let his fingers move. I need to see you. Tomorrow. It's important. He hit send. Then he put the phone away and leaned back in the chair. The house was quiet. The radiators had stopped clicking. The wind had died down. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Ha rolled closed his eyes. He had been a good father. He had been a good husband. He had been a good man. But being good hadn't protected him from being used. That he thought about what Pamela had said. Her father was a visionary. He saw things as they could be. Ha rolled had always seen things as they were. He had accepted the world as it was and tried to make the best of it. But maybe it was time to see things differently. Maybe it was time to see what he could be. He opened his eyes and looked at the filing cabinet. Tomorrow, he would call his lawyer. Tomorrow, he would start making plans. Tonight, he would sit in the quiet and let the cold anger settle into something sharper. Something that would protect what was his. Something that would ensure his son never took him for granted again. At the grandfather clock struck midnight. Ha rolled stood up and walked to the window. The street was dark. The neighbors' houses were dark. The whole world was asleep. He pressed his hand to the cold glass and watched his own reflection stare back. He had given his son everything. Every dollar. Every ounce of patience. Every shred of love. And his son had thanked him by asking for more. Not anymore. He drew the curtain and walked to bed. Tomorrow, everything would change. The morning came gray and damp, the kind of morning that seeped through the windows and settled into Ha Rolled's bones. He had slept poorly, his mind turning over the same thoughts like stones in a stream. At 5:30, he gave up on rest and made coffee. He drank it black, standing at the kitchen window, watching the street slowly come to life. The meeting with Daniel Reeves was set for 10 o'clock. That gave him 4 hours to think, to plan, to steady himself. He spent the first hour cleaning. Not the surface cleaning he did every day, but the deep kind, pulling out furniture, sweeping behind the refrigerator, scrubbing the grout in the bathroom tiles. It was mindless work, and he needed his mind to be quiet. He needed the physical effort to drown out the echoes of his son's voice. Eventually, he stood in the middle of the living room and looked around. The house was clean. It was orderly. It was the house of a man who had spent his life keeping things in their proper place. And yet, nothing felt proper anymore. He changed into a clean shirt, a navy sweater, his good shoes, the ones Helen had bought him for their last anniversary. He looked at himself in the hallway mirror. His hair was thin and white, his face lined with years of worry and quiet endurance. His eyes, though, were different. They were sharp. They were awake. He drove to the law firm in his old sedan. The car was 20 years old, with a dent in the passenger door and a stain on the back seat from a coffee spill he had never bothered to clean. He had the money to buy a new one. He had the money to buy 10 new ones. But he had never seen the point. The law firm was on the top floor of a glass building downtown. The elevator ride was smooth and silent. When the doors opened, the reception area was all chrome and white leather, the kind of place that smelled like expensive perfume and fresh flowers. Daniel Reeves was already waiting for him in the corner office. He was a stout man with a ruddy face and a full head of silver hair, the kind of man who looked like he had been a lawyer since birth. He rose from behind his desk when H.A. Rold entered, extending a broad hand. H.A. Rold, it's been too long. Daniel. H.A. Rold shook his hand. The grip was firm. "Wa-rm, sit down, sit down." Daniel gestured to a leather chair. "Coffee, tea, something stronger. Black coffee would be fine." Daniel buzzed his assistant and ordered 2 coffees. Then he sat back and studied H.A. Rold with the CA rifle, assessing gaze of a man who had spent decades reading people. "You said it was important." Daniel said, "It is." Daniel waited. He was good at waiting. That was why H.A. Rold had hired him all those years ago. Daniel didn't rush. He let the silence do the work. "I need to change my will," H.A. Rold said. "And I need to place a freeze on all the accounts I've given my son access to." Daniel's eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. "M.A. or cuss, that's a significant step." "May I ask what prompted this?" H.A. Rold told him. He told him about the dinner. He told him about M.A. Cuss's request. No, his demand for the house. He told him about Pamela's comments, about the way they had both looked at him like he was an obstacle to their future. Daniel listened without interrupting. When H.A. Rold finished, he leaned forward and folded his hands on the desk. "That's a lot to unpack," Daniel said. "First, let me confirm the current structure of your assets. You've placed most of your holdings in a trust, correct, with M.A. Cuss as the second beneficiary. That's correct. And you never formally transferred ownership of the house. It's still in your name." "Yes." "Then legally, M.A. Cuss has no claim to it. He can ask, but you can say no." "I know," H.A. Rold said. "But it's not just the house. It's everything. I've given him money over the IRS. I've given him access to accounts. I've signed over properties. I did it because I trusted him. I did it because I thought he would take CA of himself and, eventually, take CA of me." Daniel nodded slowly. "And now you're concerned that he won't." "I'm concerned that he sees me as an ATM," H.A. Rold said. "I'm concerned that he doesn't respect me. I'm concerned that when I'm gone, he'll do whatever he wants with everything I've built, and he won't think twice about it." "That's a reasonable concern," Daniel said. "But a freeze is a blunt instrument. It's going to cause immediate financial disruption for your son. You prep a red for that." H.A. Rold thought about it. He thought about M.A. Cuss's face at the dinner table, the way his smile had faded when H.A. Rold didn't immediately agree. He thought about Pamela's sharp eyes, her dismissive tone. "Yes," H.A. Rold said. "I'm prep a red." Daniel studied him for a long moment. Then he reached for a pen and a legal pad. "All right," he said. "Let's talk about what you want to do." The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end of it, H.A. Rold had a clear picture of his options. He could freeze M.A. Cuss's access to the trust accounts immediately. He could revoke M.A. Cuss's power of attorney over certain properties. He could rewrite his will to remove M.A. Cuss as the prima beneficiary, or to place conditions on any inheritance. "The freeze is the most immediate action," Daniel said. "It sends a strong signal. But it's also going to trigger a response. M.A. Cuss is going to fight back. He's going to call lawyers. He's going to argue that you're not competent to make these decisions. He can try," H.A. Rold said. "But he'll lose." Daniel smiled. "I like the confidence, H.A. Rold. But we need to be red for the fallout. This isn't going to be clean. It's going to be messy. Are you sure you're ready for that?" H.A. Rold looked out the window. The city sprawled below him, all steel and glass and concrete. He had spent his whole life in that city, working, saving, building. He had never asked for recognition. He had never asked for thanks. But he was done being invisible. "Yes," he said. "I'm ready." Daniel drafted the paperwork on the spot. H.A. Rold signed with a steady hand. The freeze would go into effect at midnight when he left the office. The sun had broken through the clouds. The streets were busy with people going about their ordinary lives. H.A. Rold walked to his car and sat in the driver's seat for a long moment. He felt lighter. Not happy, exactly, but lighter. Await he had been ring for rs at sta route to shift. He drove home and made himself lunch. A grilled cheese sandwich and a bowl of tomato soup. Helen's favorite comfort meal. He was halfway through his sandwich when his phone buzzed. It was a text from M.A. Request. Hey, Dad. Can you call me? I want to talk about the house again. H.A. rolled, set the phone down. He finished his sandwich. He washed the plate and the bowl and put them away. Then he picked up the phone and typed a reply. Not today, M.A. Request. We'll talk soon. He turned off his phone and put it in the kitchen drawer. The rest of the afternoon was quiet. H.A. rolled spent it in the GA den, pulling weeds and trimming the rose bushes. The physical labor felt good. It gave him something to focus on. By evening, his hands were dirty and his back was sore, but the GA den looked better than it had in months. He went inside and took a long shower. The hot water eased the tension in his muscles. He stood under the spray and let his thoughts wander. He thought about Helen. He wondered what she would have thought of all this. She had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over arguments and found common ground. But she had also been fierce when it came to protecting their family. She had stood up to bullies at parent-teacher conferences. She had refused to let M.A. Request quit the swim team when he wanted to give up. She had loved fiercely and without reservation. H.A. rolled missed her. He missed her every day, but today the missing felt sharper. He stepped out of the shower and dried himself off. He put on his old robe and walked to the study. He opened the filing cabinet and pulled out the folder with his investment portfolio. He spread the papers across the desk and looked at them. If there were numbers in that folder that would have made M.A. Request's jaw drop. There were holdings in companies that had grown tenfold since he'd first invested. There were real estate properties in 3 states, all of them appreciating steadily. There was a stock portfolio that had weathered recessions and booms and come out stronger. H.A. rolled had built all of it. Quietly, C.A. refully, without ever telling a soul that he thought about what Daniel had said. The freeze was a blunt instrument. It would cause disruption. It would provoke a fight, but H.A. rolled wasn't afraid of a fight anymore. He gathered the papers and placed them back in the folder. He locked the folder in the filing cabinet and pocketed the key. Then he walked to the kitchen and made himself a cup of tea. He was sitting at the table, the tea ling in front of him, when he heard a CA pull into the driveway. He didn't need to look out the window to know who it was. He could tell by the sound of the engine, the confident slam of the CA, our door to M.A. Request. H.A. rolled stayed where he was. He didn't get up. He didn't go to the door. A moment later, the doorbell rang. H.A. rolled took a sip of his tea. The doorbell rang again. And again. Then the front door opened. M.A. Request had his own key. After all, Dad. M.A. Request's voice echoed through the foyer. Dad, you here? H.A. rolled. He heard footsteps. Then M.A. Request read in the kitchen doorway. He was still in his work clothes, a crisp white shirt and tailored trousers. His face was flushed, and his eyes were bright with something that looked like excitement. Dad, we need to talk, M.A. Request said. I've been thinking about what you said last night. About the house, and I think I've got a solution. H.A. rolled set down his cup. I'm listening. M.A. Request pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. Here's the thing. I don't want you to feel like you're losing anything. I want you to feel like you're gaining something. So I've got a proposal. A proposal? H.A. rolled repeated. Yeah. I talked to Pamela's father. He's got a contact in estate planning, and he suggested a really SMA-RT structure. We could set up a joint ownership agreement. You and me. We're both on the deed. That way, you still have control, but I'm also invested in the property. I can help you with the upkeep. I can handle the repairs. And when the time comes, the transition will be seamless. H.A. rolled looked at his son. M.A. Request's face was earnest, eager. It was the face of a man who believed he was being generous. You want joint ownership, H.A. rolled said, exactly. It's the best of both worlds. And what happens to the house after I'm gone? M.A. Request's expression didn't change. Then it goes to me. Obviously. That's the whole point of joint ownership. H.A. rolled nodded slowly. He picked up his tea and took another sip. It had gone cold. M.A. Request, he said. Do you remember when you were 15 and you asked me for a CAR? M.A. Request blinked, thrown by the sudden shift. Yeah, I remember. I told you no. You were furious. You yelled. You slammed doors. You didn't speak to me for a week. I was a teenager, Dad. I was stupid. Then your mother talked to me. H.A. rolled continued. She said, he's Leah Renning. H.A. rolled. He needs to Leah RN that he can't have everything he wants. But he also needs to Leah RN that we're on his side. So I went out and bought you a used car. A clunker. It broke down twice in the first month. But you fixed it. You Leah Rened how to change the oil and patch the tires. And when you drove that car to school, you felt proud. Because you'd Rened it. Americus shifted in his chair. What's your point? My point is, Rold said. You've never had to RN anything from me. I've given you everything. And you've come to expect it. You've come to believe that my money, my house, my life is yours for the taking. Americus opened his mouth to respond, but Rold held up a hand. You asked for joint ownership, Rold said. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no to joint ownership. I'm going to say no to your proposals. I'm going to say no to Pamela's father's connections. And I'm going to say no to any other plan you come up with. Americus's face went pale. Dad, you're being unreasonable. I'm being honest, Rold said. For the first time in a long time, I'm being honest. And you need to hear it. Americus stood up abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. You're making a mistake. You're going to regret this. I don't think I will. I'll find a way around you, Americus said. His voice was cold now, sharp-edged. I have a lawyer too. I have connections. I have people who will help me fight for what's mine. Rold looked up at his son. The anger was there, raw and ungué right. It was the first honest emotion Rold had seen from him in Yaris. What's yours? Rold asked quietly. The house, Americus said. The money. Everything. I'm your son. It's all going to be mine anyway. Eventually, Rold said. But not yet. Americus sta read at him. The silence stretched between them. You're going to destroy our relationship over a piece of paper. Americus said. No. Rold said. You're going to destroy our relationship over a sense of entitlement. Americus turned and walked out. He didn't slam the door. He left it open, a rectangle of darkness framing the porch. Rold sat alone in the kitchen that he finished his cold tea. He washed the cup. He walked to the front door and closed it, locking it for the first time in Yaris. Then he went to the study and sat down at the computer. He opened the spreadsheet again. The numbers glowed on the screen, steady and reassuring. He thought about Americus's face. The anger, the entitlement, the disbelief that his father had finally said no. Rold typed a message to Daniel. Freeze the accounts at midnight. No exceptions. He hit send. Then he turned off the computer and sat in the darkness. Tomorrow, the battle would begin. Tomorrow, his son would wake up to a world that had changed it, and Rold would be ready. Rold woke to the sound of rain drumming against the window pane. It was a steady, persistent rhythm, the kind of rain that settled into the EARTH and refused to leave. The sky outside was the color of old pewter, low and heavy. He lay in bed for a moment, listening to the water run down the gutters, and felt a strange sense of calm. He had slept better than he had in weeks. The decision had been made. The line had been drawn. Whatever came next, he would face it. He made coffee and toast and sat at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. The rain muffled the sounds of the street, creating a cocoon of stillness. He ate slowly, savoring the mundane ritual of it, but his phone was still in the kitchen drawer, turned off. He left it there. He spent the morning in the study, going through old papers. There were boxes of documents he had never sorted, tax returns from the 1990s, insurance policies that had long since expired, letters from old clients thanking him for his service. He didn't need any of it, but he found himself reading each piece anyway, as if the words could somehow anchor him to the past. At 11 o'clock, he heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. He didn't need to look to know who it was. He could feel it in the sudden tension that coiled in his chest. He stayed where he was. A moment later, the doorbell rang. Then the door opened. Dad, Americus's voice was ragged. Dad, where are you? Rold set down the letter he was reading and walked to the foyer. Americus stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, his face a mask of controlled fury. You froze my accounts, Americus said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. Rold nodded. I did. You can't do that. You have no right. Those accounts in my name. That money is mine. The accounts in your name. Rold agreed. But the assets in those accounts were transferred from trust funds that I control. I had every right to place a hold on them until a full audit is completed. A full audit, Emeircus repeated, his voice rising. What audit? What are you auditing? There's nothing to audit. The money is mine. I've been using it for IRS. It's been in my accounts. I pay taxes on it. I report it on my forms. It's mine. H.A. Rold stood his ground. The money was given to you conditionally. The conditions were that you would use it responsibly, and that you would provide for me in my old age. You broke those conditions the moment you tried to force me out of my own home. Emeircus laughed. Aha, RSH, incredulous sound. You're really doing this? You're really going to destroy our relationship over a technicality? It's not a technicality, H.A. Rold said. It's the truth. And I'm tired of pretending it's not. Emeircus stepped closer, his eyes blazing. I am your son. I am your only child. Everything you have is supposed to come to me. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. Nothing is automatic, H.A. Rold said. And nothing is guaranteed. I gave you everything because I wanted to. Because I loved you. But love doesn't mean letting someone walk all over you. Love doesn't mean giving and giving until there's nothing left of yourself. Emeircus opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. For a moment, he just stood there, his hands clenched at his sides, his chest heaving. You're making a mistake, Emeircus finally said. You're going to regret this. When you're old and sick and alone, you're going to remember this moment. You're going to remember that you pushed away the only person who ever read about you. H.A. Rold felt the words land like blows. But he didn't flinch. He had been flinching for 38 years. He was done. I'm not pushing you away, H.A. Rold said. I'm standing up for myself. There's a difference. Emeircus shook his head, disgusted. I'm going to call my lawyer. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to win, Dad. And when I do, you're going to wish you had never root this. He turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. H.A. Rold stood in the foyer and listened to the sound of the CAR pulling away. The rain continued to fall, relentless and steady. He walked to the living room and sat down in his favorite A-room chair. The fabric was worn, the springs sagging, but it was comfortable. It was familiar. He closed his eyes and let out a long, slow breath. He had known it would come to this. He had known Emeircus would fight, but knowing it and experiencing it were two different things. The anger in his son's voice had been like a physical force, raw and unguided. And yet, H.A. Rold didn't feel defeated. He didn't feel regret. He felt something else. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt clear. He spent the afternoon doing ordinary things. He went to the grocery store and bought milk and bread and eggs. He stopped at the RDWA store and picked up a new rake for the garden. He drove home and put everything away. It was only when he was standing in the kitchen, putting the milk in the refrigerator, that his phone finally buzzed. He had turned it back on an hour ago, bracing himself for the inevitable flood of messages. But there was only one that was from Emeircus. I'm sorry for the way I talked to you today. That wasn't right. I lost my temper. I'm going to take a step back and think about things. We'll talk soon. H.A. Rold read the message twice. Then he set the phone down and finished putting away the groceries. He didn't believe the apology. It was too real, too measured. There was no real RMTH behind it. It was the kind of apology Emeircus had always given when he wanted something. But H.A. Rold wasn't going to dwell on it. He wasn't going to let it consume him. He made dinner. A simple meal of chicken and rice. He ate at the kitchen table, the same table where he had eaten thousands of meals over the years. After dinner, he walked to the study and opened the filing cabinet. He pulled out the folder with the investment portfolio and spread the papers across the desk. He had been thinking about what Daniel had said. The freeze was a blunt instrument. It would cause immediate financial disruption. It would provoke a fight. But it was only the beginning. H.A. Rold had spent 40 years building his wealth. He had been real, methodical, patient. And now, he needed to decide what to do with it. He had always planned to leave it to Emeircus. That had been the assumption, the default. But Emeircus had made it clear that he didn't respect H.A. Rold. He didn't see his father as a person. He saw him as a resource. H.A. Rold had given his son everything. And his son had asked for more. Maybe it was time to give to someone else. He thought about the charities Helen had supported. The local food bank, the children's hospital, the animal shelter. She had always wanted to leave a legacy, something that would outlast them. Maybe he could do that. Maybe he could build something that would truly last. He made a list. A preliminary list of organizations he might want to support. He wrote it in his full, cramped handwriting. The same handwriting he had used for decades to fill out insurance forms and sign contracts. That when he was finished, he looked at the list and felt a sense of purpose. This was his legacy. Not a mayor cuss. Not the house. Not the money. This was what he would leave behind. He put the list in the folder and locked it away. Then he went to bed. The next morning, he woke to a different world. The rain had stopped. The sun was shining, thin and pale, but shining nonetheless. The street outside was quiet. The pavement still wet from the storm. Rold made coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. He opened his phone. There were 2 messages. One from Daniel Reeves. One from a number he didn't recognize. He opened Daniel's message first. Accounts a refrozen. M.A. Urcus's lawyer has filed an emergency motion to lift the hold. I'll handle it. Don't worry. We'll win. Rold nodded to himself and moved to the second message. Mr. Finch, this is Claire Patterson from Patterson & Associates. We are reaching out on behalf of our client, Mr. M.A. Urcus Finch. We would like to schedule a meeting to discuss the status of his accounts and the legal basis for the freeze. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience. Rold read the message and felt a small, cold satisfaction. M.A. Urcus had gotten a lawyer. Just as Daniel had predicted, he typed a reply. I am represented by Daniel Reeves of Reeves, Sterling, and Associates. Please direct all correspondence to him. He sent the message. Then he put the phone down and finished his coffee. The battle was beginning. He knew that. But he was ready. He had spent a lifetime being underestimated. He had spent a lifetime letting people walk over him because it was easier than fighting. Not anymore. He stood up and walked to the window. The sun was climbing higher, burning off the last traces of the storm. The garden looked fresh and green, the rain having washed away the dust and grime. Rold looked at the garden and thought about the future. He had no idea what was coming. He had no idea how the fight with M.A. Urcus would end. But for the first time in years, he was looking forward to finding out that the days that followed took on a strange, suspended quality. Rold moved through them like a man walking through a dream, aware of the world around him, but somehow detached from it. The phone buzzed with messages from M.A. Urcus, from M.A. Urcus's lawyer, from Daniel. He answered when he needed to. He ignored the rest. The house felt different now. It was still the same rooms, the same furniture, the same creaking floorboards. But the air had changed. The silence was no longer empty. It was charged, waiting. On the 3rd day after the freeze, Rold received a certified letter. He signed for it at the front door, the postman eyeing him with the professionalism of someone who had seen too many legal documents in his career. Rold took the envelope to the study and opened it with a letter opener Helen had bought him from an antique store. The letter was from M.A. Urcus's lawyer, Claire Patterson. It was formal, precise, and threatening. It laid out M.A. Urcus's claim to the frozen assets, cited several legal precedents, and demanded an immediate lifting of the freeze. If Rold failed to comply within 72 hours, the letter stated, they would seek a court order. Rold read the letter twice. Then he read it to Daniel and waited. Daniel called him an hour later. I've seen the letter, Daniel said. It's aggressive, but it's not surprising. They're trying to pressure you into backing down. They're hoping you'll get SCA read and fold. I'm not going to fold, Rold said. I know you're not. But I want you to be prepared for what comes next. They're going to escalate. They're going to try to paint you as incompetent. They're going to argue that you're not capable of making these decisions. It's going to get personal. Rold looked out the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the garden. Let them try, he said. I admire your resolve, Rold. But I need to ask you something. Are you prepared to go all the way with this? Because once we're in court, there's no turning back. This will be public. It will be messy. And it will probably permanently damage your relationship with your son. Rold was quiet for a moment. He thought about M.A. Urcus as a child, the way he used to run across the lawn, his laughter bright and unguarded. He thought about Helen, the way she would watch M.A. Urcus play, her face soft with love. He thought about all the years he had spent trying to be a good father. I've already lost my relationship with my son, Rold said finally. I lost it a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "All right. I'll start preparing the response. But I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Stay calm. Don't engage with Americus directly. Let me handle the legal side. You just keep doing what you're doing." "What am I doing?" "Living," Daniel said. "That's the best thing you can do right now. Just live your life and let the lawyers fight." Rold hung up and sat in the quiet of the study. The room was dim, the only light coming from the lamp on his desk. He looked at the piles of paperwork, the old photographs, the relics of a life he was beginning to realize he had let slip away. He had spent so many years taking ca of everyone else. He had taken ca of Americus. He had taken ca of Helen. He had taken ca of clients and colleagues and neighbors. He had been so focused on being useful that he had forgotten to be himself. But he was rooting to remember. The next morning, Rold did something he hadn't done in years. He went for a walk, not a short walk to the mailbox or the corner store. A real walk, the kind he used to take with Helen on Sunday afternoons. He put on his old walking shoes and a jacket and stepped out the front door. The neighborhood was quiet, the streets lined with houses that had been there for decades. He walked past the park where Americus used to play, past the school where he had attended parent-teacher conferences, past the corner store where he used to buy Helen her favorite flowers. He walked for an hour, letting his mind wander. He didn't think about Americus or the lawsuit or the frozen accounts. He just walked, feeling the cool air on his face and the solid ground beneath his feet. When he returned home, he felt different, lighter, clearer. That he made lunch and ate it in the GA den, sitting on the old bench that Helen had bought at a GA rage sale. The roses were blooming, their petals a deep, rich red. He leaned back and closed his eyes, letting the sun warm his face. That the peace didn't last. That afternoon, his phone buzzed with a call from Americus. Rold almost ignored it. But something made him answer. "Dad." Americus's voice was tired, strained. "I need to talk to you." "I'm listening." "Pamela left me." Rold felt a jolt of surprise. "What happened?" "She found out about the freeze. She's furious. She said I've ruined everything. She said I'm a failure." She packed a bag and went to her father's house. Americus laughed bitterly. "I don't even know if she's coming back." "I'm sorry," Rold said. And he meant it. Whatever he thought of Pamela, he didn't want to see Americus suffer. "She said I should have been ruder," Americus continued. "She said I should have seen this coming. She said I should have protected our assets. And she's right. I was arrogant. I thought I could just take whatever I wanted and nobody would stop me." Rold didn't respond. He let the words hang in the air. "I know I screwed up," Americus said. "I know I treated you badly. I know I said things I shouldn't have. But I'm asking you, Dad. I'm begging you. Please lift the freeze. I'll do whatever you want. I'll sign the house back over to you. I'll never ask for anything again. Just please give me a chance to fix this." Rold listened to his son's voice. He heard the desperation, the fear, the genuine remorse. But he also heard something else. He heard the echo of every other time Americus had asked for something. The promises that had been broken, the trust that had been eroded. "I can't," Rold said. "Not yet. Dad, please. I'm not saying no forever," Rold said. "I'm saying not yet. I need time to think. I need to see that you've really changed. I need to see that you mean what you say." Americus was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to prove it," Rold said. "Not with words. With actions. I want to see you take responsibility for what you've done. I want to see you try to make things right. How, I don't know. That's for you to figure out." Americus was silent again. Then he said, "I'll try, Dad. I'll try." He hung up. Rold read at the phone for a long moment. He wasn't sure if he believed Americus. He wasn't sure if he could ever trust him again. But he was willing to give him a chance. That evening, Rold received another letter. This one was from Daniel. "Americus's lawyer has filed the motion. We'll be in court next week. I've read a strong response. I don't think they have a case, but the judge will need to hear both sides. Stay strong. We'll get through this." Rold read the letter and felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Court. It was one thing to talk about legal battles in the abstract. It was another thing to know he would have to sit in a courtroom and face his son across the aisle. But he had made his decision. He wasn't going to back down now. He went to bed early that night. exhausted by the weight of everything. But sleep didn't come easily. He lay in the darkness. STA ring at the ceiling, his mind churning that he thought about M.A. Rukus's voice on the phone. The desperation. The fear. He thought about Pamela, who had left her husband the moment things got difficult. He thought about all the years he had spent trying to build a family, and how quickly it had all fallen apart, but he also thought about the future. The possibilities. The freedom. For the first time in his life, he was in control. He fell asleep with that thought in his mind. The next morning, he woke to a world that felt new. The sun was bright. The birds were singing. The garden was in bloom. And Rold felt, for the first time in years, like himself. He made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. He opened the newspaper and read the headlines. The world was still turning. Life was still happening. And he was ready to be part of it. He spent the day doing small, ordinary things. He went to the grocery store. He fixed a loose hinge on the kitchen cabinet. He called an old friend he hadn't spoken to in years. It was a simple day, a quiet day. But it was the beginning of something new. In the evening, he walked to the study and opened the filing cabinet. He pulled out the folder with the investment portfolio and looked at it. He had been thinking about what to do with all of this. The money, the assets, the legacy. He still didn't have a clear answer. But he was rooting to have ideas. He made a note on a piece of paper. Writable foundation. He wrote it down and put it in the folder. Then he closed the cabinet and went to bed. The court date was still a week away. He had time. Time to plan. Time to think. Time to prepare. He fell asleep with a sense of purpose. And for the first time in a long time, he dreamed of the future. The courtroom smelled of old wood and anxiety. Rold sat at the defendant's table, his hands folded neatly in front of him. He had worn his best suit, the navy one Helen had bought him for their 40th anniversary. It was slightly loose now. He had lost weight over the past weeks. But the fabric was still good, the lines still sharp. Daniel sat beside him, calm and unruffled, his silver hair catching the fluorescent light. He had spent the morning going over the arguments, reviewing the documents, preparing Rold for every possible question. But Rold's mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about M.A. Rukus. His son sat at the plaintiff's table, across the aisle, with Claire Patterson beside him. M.A. Rukus looked different. His suit was expensive, but it hung on him oddly, as if he had lost weight too. His face was pale, his eyes shadowed. He didn't look like the confident man who had demanded his father leave the house. He looked like a man who had been running on empty for a long time. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The proceedings began. Claire Patterson spoke first. She was sharp and polished, her arguments clean and precise. She laid out M.A. Rukus's case. The freeze was unjustified. The accounts were legally his, and Rold had no right to interfere. She painted Rold as a bitter old man, lashing out at his son out of spite. Rold listened without reacting. He had expected this. Daniel had read him for this. Then Daniel rose. He spoke quietly, but his voice ride through the courtroom. He laid out the history, the trust documents, the conditional transfers, the years of financial support. He showed the judge the paperwork, the agreements that M.A. Rukus had signed, the obligations he had failed to meet. Mr. Finch Sr. gave his son everything, Daniel said. He gave him money. He gave him property. He gave him opportunity. And in return, his son tried to take his home. He tried to push him out of the life he had built. The freeze is not an act of spite. It is an act of self-preservation. It is a man protecting what is left of his dignity. The judge listened. She asked questions. She reviewed the documents. She took her time. And then, after 2 hours of arguments, she made her ruling that the freeze would remain in place pending a full audit of the trust assets. M.A. Rukus's motion was denied. M.A. Rukus's face went white. He turned to look at his father, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Rold met his gaze. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just looked at his son and felt a strange, quiet sadness. The courtroom emptied. Daniel shook Rold's hand and told him he had done well. The press, the lawyers, the spectators all filed out, leaving Rold alone in the empty room. He sat at the table for a long moment. Ring at the empty bench where the judge had sat. Then he stood up and walked out. M.A. Rukus was waiting for him in the hallway. Dad. M.A. Rukus's voice was Hoa RSE. Can we talk? H.A. Rold looked at his son. M.A. Ruckus's eyes were red-rimmed, his face drawn. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. All right, H.A. Rold said that they walked to a small cafe across the street. It was quiet, almost empty. They sat at a table by the window, and H.A. Rold ordered 2 cups of coffee. M.A. Ruckus didn't touch his. He just read at it, his hands wrapped around the cup as if he were trying to rm them. You won, M.A. Ruckus said finally. I hope you're happy. I'm not happy, H.A. Rold said. I'm not happy at all. M.A. Ruckus looked up, surprised. Then why did you do it? Why did you put me through all of this? H.A. Rold took a sip of his coffee. It was bitter, just the way he liked it, because I needed you to understand, H.A. Rold said. I needed you to understand that I am not a resource. I am not a bank account. I am your father, and I deserve to be treated with respect. M.A. Ruckus looked down at his coffee. I know I messed up. You did, H.A. Rold agreed. But that's not what this is about. This isn't about punishment. It's about bound a rise. It's about finally, after all these years, drawing a line. M.A. Ruckus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Pamela's not coming back. She filed for divorce. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was coming for a long time. I just didn't want to see it. M.A. Ruckus laughed bitterly. She ride me for the money. The same money I thought I'd get from you. And now she's gone. And the money is gone. And I've got nothing. You've got yourself, H.A. Rold said. You've got the chance to start over. M.A. Ruckus looked at him, his eyes sea urching. Is that what you did start over? I'm trying, H.A. Rold said. I'm still trying. They sat in silence for a while, the coffee growing cold between them. I'm going to give the house back, M.A. Ruckus said finally. I'll sign the deed over to you. No conditions. H.A. Rold nodded slowly. That would be a good first step. First step Tawa RD what? Tawa RD rebuilding, H.A. Rold said. Tawa Road, EA running back the trust you lost. M.A. Ruckus nodded, but he didn't look convinced. And after that what happens next, H.A. Rold thought about it. He thought about the GA den, overgrown with weeds. He thought about the crack in the dining room wall. He thought about all the small, broken things that had accumulated over the years, waiting to be fixed. We figure it out, H.A. Rold said. One day at a time. One step at a time. That's all any of us can do. M.A. Ruckus nodded slowly. He reached for his coffee and took a sip. It must have been cold, but he didn't complain. I want to try, M.A. Ruckus said. I want to be better. I don't know if I can, but I want to try. H.A. Rold looked at his son. He saw the exhaustion, the remorse, the flicker of hope. That's all I ask, H.A. Rold said. They finished their coffee and walked out of the cafe together. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment, not sure what to say. I'll have the papers sent to your lawyer, M.A. Ruckus said. The deed transfer, I mean. All right. I'll call you next week, M.A. Ruckus said. If that's okay. It's okay, H.A. Rold said. I'll be here. M.A. Ruckus nodded and walked away. H.A. Rold watched him go, his footsteps slow and heavy. Then he turned and walked home. The house was quiet when he entered. The grandfather clock ticked steadily in the hallway. He walked to the dining room and stood in the doorway, looking at the crack in the wall. It was still there, thin as a spider's leg, branching out across the plaster. He thought about all the years he had ignored it. All the years he had pretended it wasn't there. He walked to the GA rage and found the old spackle and putty knife. He hadn't used them in years. The spackle was dry, useless. He would have to buy new supplies. But that was okay. He would fix it. He would take his time and do it right. He set the supplies down and walked to the study. He opened the filing cabinet and pulled out the folder with the investment portfolio. He looked at the numbers, the holdings, the properties. He thought about the charitable foundation he had been considering. He thought about the local food bank, the children's hospital, the animal shelter. He thought about Helen and how she would have wanted him to do something good with all of this. He took out a piece of paper and wrote a note. I want to start a foundation. I want to give back. I want to build something that outlasts me. He folded the note and put it in the folder. Then he walked to the kitchen and made himself a cup of tea. Earl Grey, Helen's favorite. He sat at the kitchen table and looked out the window. The GA den was dark now, the roses invisible in the night. But he could smell them. The scent drifted through the open window, sweet and strong. He thought about M.A. Ruckus. He thought about the court case, the arguments, The YRS of struggle that he thought about the crack in the wall. The crack he was going to fix that he thought about the future. The uncertainty. The possibility. He took a sip of his tea and let the YRMTH spread through him. The grandfather clock struck 9. H.A. Rold sat in the quiet of his home and let himself feel it. The peace. The calm. The hope. He had come a long way from the dinner table where his son had kicked him out. He had come a long way from the man who had signed over his house without reading the fine print. He was still the same person. Still H.A. Rold Finch, retired insurance agent, widower, fathered. But he was also something new. He was a man who had finally learned to stand up for himself. He was a man who had finally learned to say no. He was a man who had finally, after all these years, SDA route to live for himself. He finished his tea and washed the cup. He put it in the drying rack, next to the mug Helen had bought on their honeymoon in Maine. The one with the small chip on the rim. He looked at the mug and smiled. He wasn't going to fix the chip. He was going to keep it just the way it was. A reminder of where he had come from. A reminder of the life he had built. He walked to the front door and stepped outside. The night air was cool and clean. The stars were out, scattered across the sky like tiny lights. He looked up at them and felt small, but not insignificant. He was part of something bigger. He always had been. He just hadn't seen it. He went back inside and locked the door. He walked to his bedroom and lay down. Tomorrow, he would start fixing the crack. Tomorrow, he would call Daniel and talk about the foundation. Tomorrow, he would begin the next chapter. But tonight, he would rest. He closed his eyes and let the quiet wrap around him. And he dreamed of the future at the end.